They did not warn you. They did not warn anyone. Imagine waking up one morning to find your water contaminated, your children sick, your neighbors collapsing. And the government already knows. Not suspects. Knows. Documents exist. Meetings have been held in sealed rooms, far from public ears. Officials have already calculated the acceptable losses, weighed the cost of honesty against the cost of silence, and chosen silence. This is not a thriller. This is not speculation. This happened, and for decades, the people who suffered most, ordinary men, women, and children, were left to believe the unimaginable was simply bad luck. We have been conditioned to trust the institutions that govern us. We believe that power comes with responsibility, but what you are about to discover shatters that belief completely. A dangerous event changed thousands of lives forever, not in some distant authoritarian state, not in a forgotten century. Close, recent, real, powerful forces controlled what you were allowed to know. Records were buried, witnesses were silenced. The story was rewritten, not to protect national security, but to protect the powerful from the consequences of their own catastrophic failures. What happens when the people meant to protect you become the very threat you should fear most? Stay with us, because once you know this, you cannot unknow it. Picture a community that believed it was safe. Families going about their daily routines, children walking to school, workers heading to factories, farmers tending their fields. No visible threat. No warning sirens, no emergency broadcasts. But beneath the surface of that ordinary world, something terrifying had already been set in motion. At the center of this story sits a dangerous event, one that released invisible harm into the air, the water, the soil. Those responsible knew within hours. Internal communications confirm it. Memos were drafted, flagged, forwarded upward through chains of command, and then sealed. The people in charge faced a decision no government should ever face. Admit the truth and face the consequences, or bury it and gamble that the damage would go unnoticed. They chose to bury it. For years, in some cases, decades, the official narrative was constructed with surgical precision. Public statements were crafted to calm, not inform. Medical records were suppressed. Scientists who raised alarms found their funding cut, their careers derailed, their research dismissed. The machinery of power does not silence people loudly. It does it quietly, methodically, with paperwork and bureaucracy, and the slow suffocation of inconvenient truth. Communities were told, nothing happened here. Move on. Trust us. And most of them did. But here is what the officials never anticipated. The forbidden documents still existed, hidden in filing cabinets, tucked into government archives, guarded by whistleblowers who refused to let history be erased. One document changed everything. The document that resurfaced was damning beyond imagination. Internal records revealed that officials had received detailed reports within the first 48 hours of the event, long before any public announcement was made. Those reports contained health risk assessments, contamination maps, and projected casualty figures. Every single one was classified. Every single one was kept from the people it most affected. One internal memo, later obtained through declassification, read with the cold detachment of bureaucracy, risk levels had been deemed manageable. Not for the communities affected, but for the institutions responsible. Manageable. That word, applied to human lives. Thousands of people in the affected area began falling ill in patterns too systematic to be coincidence. Rare cancers appeared in clusters. Children developed respiratory conditions that baffled local doctors. Doctors who, unbeknownst to them, were being denied access to the very data that would have explained everything. Here is the jaw-dropping reality that redefines this entire story. The medical community was not simply kept in the dark. Evidence suggests they were actively misled. Reports were altered. Baseline health data from the region was quietly revised. The contamination was not just covered up after the fact. It appears it was being managed as a liability long before the public ever suspected anything was wrong. Survivors who began to speak out found themselves dismissed, discredited, labeled as alarmists. Their testimonies, raw, consistent, overwhelming in number, were absorbed into a system designed to make truth vanish. And yet, truth is persistent. Investigative journalists, independent scientists, freedom of information requests filed across decades. Slowly, painstakingly, the buried history began to surface. And what it revealed was not merely negligence. It revealed deliberate, calculated suppression by the very people sworn to protect. When the truth finally broke into the open, the response from power was precisely what you would expect: denial, then deflection, then the slow, grinding machinery of damage control. Official inquiries were launched, but critics noted they were overseen by the very institutions implicated. Recommendations were made, reports were published, and then, almost imperceptibly, the momentum faded. No senior officials faced criminal prosecution. No one responsible for the deliberate suppression of life-threatening information was imprisoned. The system, as it so often does, protected itself. But the communities who suffered, they carried the weight that no inquiry could lift. The mothers who watched their children's health deteriorate without explanation. The workers who developed conditions they would never fully recover from. The generations that followed, inheriting illnesses traced back to those years of forbidden silence. Some received compensation, settlements that came with non-disclosure agreements, as though the suffering could be purchased into silence once more. Yet why does this matter today? Because this is not simply a historical artifact. Governments around the world continue to manage information in crisis scenarios. Risk assessments are still made behind closed doors. The frameworks that allowed this suppression to happen have not been dismantled. They have evolved. Every time a government delays transparency during an environmental disaster, a public health crisis, or an industrial failure, we are standing at the edge of this same dark story. The names change. The locations change. The mechanisms of power remain terrifyingly consistent. You deserve to know what is being decided in your name, behind your back, about your life, because the most dangerous words a government can speak are not lies. They are, trust us. History does not bury itself. People bury it. Institutions bury it. Power buries it. Because truth, when inconvenient, becomes the most dangerous thing in the world to those who hold authority. But dark history has a way of refusing to stay buried. It surfaces in the testimonies of survivors, in the documents that someone, somewhere, refused to destroy, in the quiet persistence of people who believed that what happened to them deserved to be known. What this story teaches us is not simply about one event, one cover-up, one government. It teaches us something profound and uncomfortable about the nature of power itself, that the greater the authority, the greater the temptation to control not just people, but truth. We must remain the ones who ask questions, the ones who demand answers, the ones who refuse to accept silence as a substitute for accountability. If this story shook something in you, we want to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe this kind of hidden history deserves to be exposed, subscribe, because there is so much more they don't want you to know.